Ndị Igbo ekeneni m unu. Asị m na ọ ya dịrị ala Igbo na mma. Na ala Igbo ya dị ka echi, na echi ada agwụ agwụ. Ihe a bụ Igbo Media bụ ebe a siweletere ya bụ akụkọ ụwa gbasịta maka ya bụ ihe na-eme na ala Igbo n'ebe niile gbara gburugburu bụ ala Igbo si wee bido. Dịka o si dị, ozi ewetara unu ụbọchị nke taa bụ ozi gbasịta maka mkpagbu a na-eme ndị Igbo and nwere onwe a na-azụ n'ala Igbo dịka unu si wee na-anụ ya n'ebe dị iche iche ka o si ada. Ọzọ dịka ibe ya bụ ọbụna nke ụbọchị izi gị gaba arụ ka ịtụsa ya bụ ozi anyị na-achọ ịnọ na Igbo Media kwurute ụmụnne anyị ndị ọzọ n'ebe dị iche iche ka e wee kọọrọ ụmụnne fa wee marakwanụ ka ya bụ ife si akpọtụ n'obodo anyị nọ n'ime ya ma ndị nwere ụwa na-azọ n'ala Igbo. Dịka o si dị, a ga-alapụ unu ugbu a ka unu gee ya bụ ozi nke anyị ji maka ya wee bịa n'ụbọchị uruchi nke taa. Ị ga-esi ya gị deela anyị n'akara kọmentị ihe iche n'ụdị nke gị gbasịta maka ya bụ ife. Ngwadalụ nwanne m, gwa ya okwu.
By America and the whole world. Today, the one you're seeing on the screen, his name is J.D. Vance, the Vice President of America. As Trump goes, so does J.D. Vance. Today, he's brought the heat, the pressure. He's shaming Europe, the so-called European leaders and allies of America. I want you to hear what he said in this video to let you know that very, very soon, our Simon Ekpa, our Prime Minister, Obatobie, will be set free because Finland has no business dealing with a third world country like Nigeria to help to sabotage the interest of the Biafrans, the Christians. Finland, we know your history. We know part of the Vikings' history, the lineage for the Vikings shows that you guys, you're leaning towards Islam. Hence, you're working with the Fulani Caliphate, those who were sponsoring Boko Haram with USAID. Finland, be careful. Do not put your hands in the cookie jar because when it happens, you might be found wanting. The game you're playing with Nigeria might turn around and eat you from the backside. When you play with the wet paint, whenever you are ready to let go of that paint, that wall, your body will be stained with paint. Today, the nonsense Finland is doing to a black Finnish citizen, Mazi Ekpa Simon Njoku, has been checkmated. I want you to hear what the Vice President of USA said, J.D. Vance. They call this one a shame to European leaders, to their faces. And he left the room. They were all stunned. This happened in Munich, Germany. They were shocked. They never saw this coming. Hence, we are calling on Finland to wash their hands off Simon Ekpa's case. Because Finland is colluding with a third world country, a terrorist country known as Nigeria. Finland is doing this to a black Finnish citizen by the name Simon Ekpa. So I want you to understand the significance of the speech given by J.D. Vance. Very, very important. And at the end, you will now see that Trump has come to stamp his authority in Europe. Fellow Biafrans, if you're ready, lend me your ears. I present to you J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States of America. Thank you.
Introduced, I understand, by the chairman of the Munich Security Conference. Let's listen in. There he is.
I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, you know, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of those who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, you know, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even as, of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now, I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
J.D. Vance, Mr. Vice President, we also want you to look at Finland at this point because they are no longer upholding what they call the rule of law in Europe or in Finland. As we speak, we now have Finland working with third world countries, Islamic countries like Nigeria, that breed and groom terrorists, And suddenly, those who are fighting for their own liberty, the Biafrans, we the Christians, as you all know, the war between Islam and Christianity is real, especially in Africa. Nigeria have been grooming Boko Haram, ISIS, ISWAP, with the point and a viewpoint to make sure they are able to Islamize Nigeria, and by proxy, everyone, be the Christians, will also be Islamized. Hence, the quest for our independence. Once again, we are calling and yelling for the independence of a sovereign state of Biafra, because we Biafrans are largely Christians, and we don't believe in being Islamized or being terrorist. Hence, on the month of November 2024, we redeclared our independence in Latin Finland. But guess what? A week to the date of our redeclaration, Finland colluded with Nigeria to arrest our leader, His Excellency, Mazi Simon Ekpa. And since the 29th of November, when our independence was redeclared till this day, it is now 3 months and counting. It has been close to 100 days, and our leader, Simon Ekpa, is still being held in Finland incommunicado. They said they will charge him with terrorism, but till this day, no charges has been brought against him. And guess what? For 100 days, he's been held in a dungeon in Finland without any rule of law being respected, without having any fair trial. This is what Finland is turning into. So to the Vice President, I really appreciate and re-echo your words when you said things are changing in Finland or in Europe, which has been the #1 ally to America. But all I want to say is, as you touch on Sweden, we also want you to shine a light on Finland, because what they are doing is wrong. It is against the tenets of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Thank you, and please continue.
And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. After British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless America.
Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
Well said. Well said.
Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which of course brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win an election. Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we're defending in the first place?
Yes.
I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful...
There you have it, my people. There you have it. Just an abridged version of J.D. Vance speaking to the European allies. A new sheriff in town, we're in a brand new day, and things will start to turn around. So Finland, you still have the chance to turn things around. Britain, you have the time to turn things around. Make sure that Nnamdi Kanu, who is a British citizen, is set free in that shithole called Nigeria. Nigeria has no right holding a British citizen for 3-4 years and counting. And Britain has said nothing about it. Where is the conscience of Britain? You tell me, where is the conscience of Britain? Likewise, Finland, a country that used to be champion when it comes to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. But today, because of the promise of gas and oil from Nigeria, Finland is holding on a black Finnish citizen on incommunicado, 100 days and counting, at the pleasure of Nigeria. They call it a deal come true, a favor for a favor. You give us gas and oil and we shall keep this man called Simon Ekpa somewhere. This is the problem happening in Europe. They have left their core value. Europe used to be a safe haven for people. But today, they will sell you out to make a deal with a terrorist government such as Nigeria. Fellow Biafrans, as I wrap this one up, all I want to say is kudos to the Vice President of America, J.D. Vance. We thank you. We appreciate you. We plead with you to please hurry to our aid. We, the Biafrans, we have suffered a lot. We are Christians, largely Christians. 99% of us are Christians living in Biafra land. Unfortunately, the Nigerian government, they have come to Islamize us. They have come to take over our land. They have come to subjugate us, and they have come to take over our resources. They said we are the stumbling block, stopping Nigeria, the Fulani Caliphate, the Islamic agenda to Islamize Nigeria. They see we the Biafrans as the stumbling block. Hence, they have colluded with all the other tribes in Nigeria to find a way to subjugate us, blackmail us, relegate us to the background before they bring their Boko Haram, ISIS, ISWAP to come over and crush us to death. They've been doing this. All our lands, you look around the land of Biafra, they are coming to take over our land, they are oppressing us, and they are killing us in the process. We are saying enough is enough. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We are sick and tired of dying and nobody is speaking out. The government of Nigeria does not care about us. They don't even speak about it. The media has been sanctioned in Nigeria never to show a video or speak about the ills happening in the land of Biafra. Hence, we took destiny into our hands. And on the 29th of November 2024, Biafrans in home and diaspora, we headed to Lahti, Finland, where we redeclared our independence. And ever since, it's been great. Unfortunately, Finland fell for Nigeria. They fell for the Okidot. Suddenly, a European country, a so-called first world country, colluded with Nigeria to sabotage and steal the freedom of a black Finnish citizen. If you say that is racism, it's on you to say that. But it is strange that a Finnish citizen, because they are black, suddenly Finland has decided to trade with that man with Nigeria. A man who has lived in Finland, has committed no crime in Finland. All these years he's been in Finland. He's been a good man of good repute. But somehow Finland deemed it fit to do a so-called business, a partnership, an agreement, a mutual understanding deal to keep Simon Ekpa in a solitary confinement at the pleasure of Nigeria. They said he's the problem. They said he's the one calling for us to declare our independence and freedom. Today, in his absence, we the Biafrans, we came together and we redeclared our independence from Nigeria. But it is shocking and very, very baffling that Finland, of all people, a nation such as Finland, that the only thing they have is their good name and reputation. They have allowed Nigeria, a shithole country, a third world country, an underdeveloping country, a criminal enterprise like Nigeria. They have allowed Nigeria to soil the name, to tarnish the reputation of Finland. So as I draw this one close, I call on J.D. Pence. I call on J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, the president, to please hurry to the aid of the Biafrans. We are calling upon you. We need your help. We need your support. We are saying that they have killed us enough. We are Christians and we decide to remain Christians. We don't want to be Islamized. We don't believe in Islamification and Islamization. They have come to kill us. They have.
Ngwano dalo nine no umunne m dikun sinesera n'Igbo media. Gịnị kunu were ikwu na nkọwa nke unu gbasata maka ihe unu n'iru akwụkwọ n'ụbọchị uhuruchi nke taa. Gwa anyị ife iche n'ụdị nke gị. Deela ya n'akara kọmentị ka mara ihe i chere. Ma chetakwa tụsa ya bụ ozi ka o were ụmụnne anyị ndị ọzọ ntị. Ndewo na ụmụnne m ka emesịa nụ.